Hello everyone! I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today we are going to talk about my novel Geisha Hands and how exactly it came to be. Now you may be thinking, I've seen this video before, and you would be right. I have done 2 videos about Geisha Hands previously, and we're gonna make another one! And the reason that I am going to rehash this is because today we are going to talk about the true origins of how exactly Geisha Hands came to be a story. Geisha Hands is a historical fiction novel, and it is unusual in that it is a fully illustrated book. It has color pictures in it. And how exactly this book came to be was while I was a student at Columbia College Chicago. In one of my writing classes, we had to read the story The Nose. And for those of y'all that are unfamiliar, The Nose is a not quite magical realism. I'm not sure what exactly the category is. It's a very specific category sort of thing. Basically, it's this guy wakes up and his nose is no longer attached to his face. And he picks it up off his pillow and tries to put it back on his face, and it won't stick. And as the book progresses, the story gets more ridiculous until the nose is basically the size of a human, and it's like personified and running around town, and like it's friends with his friends, and it's like everybody knows who the nose is. Like he's been a person since forever, and they think the guy is crazy. Like, how do you not know the nose, dude? Like, we've known him our whole lives. Hello. It's very bizarre. And then the story ends with he wakes up basically a few days later, and suddenly everything's back to normal. His nose is back on his face. The nose is not personified. It's not the size of a person. It's very bizarre. I personally did not care for the story. It's really not my cup of tea. I found it to be very confusing. We had to read that story, and then as an exercise, we had to write our own version of The Nose. And so for the purpose of the class, a lot of these type of assignments, we had to basically, it was kind of like writing fan fiction, honestly, in that we had to very much copy the hallmarks of the story exactly. We couldn't just use it as a jumping off point. It had to be basically exactly the same as the story we had read. So for mine, I called it The Geisha's Hand. The reason being is that I had it where this geisha actually had Hoshi was the main character. Funny enough, she is one of the secondary characters in Geisha Hands. In The Geisha's Hand, she was the main character. And she wakes up one day, and her hand is no longer attached to her arm. She just has a little stump here. And it's the same thing where it's her hand is just laying there detached on the floor, and she's trying to put it back on, and it's not staying on. And Hiroka-san is like, what are you doing screwing around? You need to go to school. Hello, you've got lessons, and then you've got clients after that. Like, what are you doing? Get a move on. And she's like, but my hand. And she's like, I don't want to hear stupid excuses. Get out of the house and go do your things. And so she's like, it's totally wacky and silly. She's trying to go through her daily lessons with hand that's not attached to her wrist, trying to play the shamisen and trying to dance, and her teachers have just no sympathy for her. They're just like, well, why did you forget your hand today? Or are you just stupid? Just the same level of absurdness as the original story. And then it just becomes where the hand is all of a sudden personified and the size of a person, and it's apparently the hand is the most famous geisha in the Hanamachi, and poor Hoshi's like, what am I going to do now? How am I going to get my hand back when my hand is the most famous geisha ever? It's never going to want to come home and live on my wrist again. And then at the end of the story, she wakes up and her hand is back where it's supposed to be, and everything's fine. The end. So, and I know that sounds completely bananas crazy, but that's literally how The Nose was, and that was the assignment. That's what I was supposed to do. So I emulated it as closely as I was supposed to. And I basically kind of just put that assignment away in a drawer for a long time and just kind of forgot about it because it was just so stupid And I also really did not like reading the nose. So, of course, I really did not like the assignment I had to do for that book. And I kind of forgot about it for a while. And then in one of my later classes, so a couple years later, in another one of my writing classes at college, I pulled out that assignment and I became interested in it again. And I was like, there is something here. And that's where I really got the idea to focus on the idea of Geisha's hands. For the most part, Geisha's hands are like the cornerstone of all of their work. Their hands are so important. And it's kind of weird how they have this relationship with their hands and that their hands are so crucial to the artistic work that they do, whether they're dancing or they're playing an instrument or even when they're singing. The types of gestures they make while they're singing are just as important. And then also with flower arranging, with interacting with a client, the way that they express themselves, the very graceful way they use their hands when talking, and I'm going to place my hand on your shoulder, and the way they pour tea and all that. There is so much importance on their hands. And then yet at the same time, they are so abusive to their hands. Like, they have to literally scar their hands and create calluses on their hands so that they can play shamisen and play other musical instruments, because, as any musician will tell you, it does take a certain amount of abusing your hands in order to properly play instruments and be able to do a lot of those repetitive motions over and over again without getting tons of blisters and all that. So that's why I really explored a lot of that in the story, is actually from that assignment. Is it made me really zero in on this specific body part. And then I really sat down and thought about it, about how, what? A geisha's hands are very important. They're probably one of the most important parts of their body for what they do. And some may argue that their face is the most important part of their job. And while, yes, it is required that geisha have to look youthful and beautiful, but if they're not talented with their hands, if they're not graceful with their hands, doesn't matter how pretty they are, if they can't play an instrument, if they can't dance, if they can't pour tea, kind of SOL. It's kind of a big part of the job. So that's really the nitty-gritty origin of my novel Geisha Hands. Is it started out as this absolutely wild and wacky class assignment, and it's just so funny to me when every once in a while when I'm going through some of my old documents and I find that file and I pull it up again and I look at it, and just every time I read it, I just forget about how completely bananas and silly it is, and then I read it again and I have a good laugh because it's just ridiculous. It's not something I ever plan on publishing because it's just absolutely ridiculous. Plus, I'm sure copyright issues. I'm pretty sure it's so close to the nose that I would get in some sort of trouble, and I have no interest in that. But also, I kind of really don't want other people to see it because it is so ridiculous. But yeah. Oh, memory lane, y'all. So I wanted to give y'all this little bit of insight into how Geisha Hands became a story, because this is a big part of my writing, y'all, is that when people ask me what inspired me to create certain novels that I've written, this is really the core of how a lot of these novels start, as they usually start as something really small, and sometimes it can be kind of out of left field what they start with, such as my romance novels, Tearing Down the Wall, Freya's Baby Shattered. Those all started as Hey Arnold fanfictions. Love of the Sea started as a class assignment in my fantasy fiction class at college, Columbia College, Chicago. Tina Jen's class, nonetheless. And, of course, Succumb to Darkness started as a poem. It didn't even start as a story. It started as a poem. And from that poem, I actually wrote 2 more poems that were inspired by that original poem. And it wasn't until the 3rd poem that I wrote, which was actually a saga, not a poem, that I finally was inspired to write a full novel about that subject. It's just crazy, the evolution of where I originally get an idea from and how I decide to grow it into a novel. And I could honestly sit here all day and list off all of the different ways that I've been inspired to write all of the different things that I'm working on writing. I'm not going to do that because that would take forever and probably be very boring. But it just gives you an idea of just all the different places that you can really pull inspiration from, and that you never know, that weird class assignment, that really weird drawing you did that was really cringe and embarrassing, or whatever, just anything can really inspire something big if you find that inspiration and let it grow. So I want to thank y'all so much for watching this video. I hope it was entertaining and gives you a little more insight into my process as an author. If you like this video, please do give it a like, and if you're new, subscribe. It really helps my channel. So I want to thank y'all so much. Take care. Bye bye.